Hello, class. These are my audiences. One of them will help me to record my speech. Today, I prepared to tell you about Francis Scott Key. When you hear the name Francis Scott Key, what sort of things immediately come to your mind? Don't you hear about him? I tried to do some researches on Francis Scott Key's biography, his famous poem, The Star Spangled Banner, and his memorials. In my speech, I will cover a few things about who he is, what inspired him to write his famous poem, and how it became a national anthem. And also, I will tell you where we can find his monument and memorials. First, I will start with his biography. According to Mark Lipon's book titled What So Proudly We Hailed Francis Scott Key Alive. Francis Scott Key was born in August 1st, 1779, at the family plantation known as Terra Rubra, near Kenmare, Maryland, currently Frederick County, Maryland. He was educated at home until the age of 10, and then he attended Annapolis Grammar School. Later, Kay went to St. Mary's College in Annapolis and graduated college when he was 17 years old in 1796. At the age of 26, by 1805, Kay had begun to practice law in Georgetown, Maryland. According to the biography.com website, Francis Scott Key wed or married Mary Polly Taylor Lloyd. The historian Mark Lipson's book detailed their family background and the marriage. The wedding took place on January 19, 1802. By the time, Polly was 17 and Frank was 22. Kay had more than nothing, but the young lawyer from Western Maryland stood well below the Lloyds socially and economically. The couple had 11 children, 6 boys and 5 girls. As it mentioned in the National Park Service website, Francis Scott Key was a deeply religious person. At one time in his life, he almost gave up his law practice to enter ministry. Instead, he resolved to become involved in the Episcopal Church. Because of his religious beliefs, Kay was strongly opposed the War of 1812. However, due to his deep love for his country, he served for a short period of time in Captain George Peters' Georgetown Light Field Artillery in 1813. Second, I want to tell you about Francis Scott Key's famous poem and the situations that inspired him to write his poem. In August 1814, British troops invaded Washington, D.C. and burned the White House, Capitol building, the Library of Congress, and then their next target was Baltimore. During this war, an elderly, respected physician, Dr. William Beans, was arrested for unfriendly acts toward British soldiers who had tried to plunder his Upper Marlboro, Maryland home. Kay agreed to act in behalf of Dr. Beans and received permission from President Madison to try negotiating the release of this prominent Maryland physician. Kay left Baltimore to obtain the service of Colonel John Skinner, the government's prisoners of war exchange agent. According to the History.com website, on September 14, 1814, Francis Scott Key traveled on cruise ship to meet the British fleet. Americans of the British agreed to release Dr. Beans. So, as not to warn the Americans of the British attack, the cruise ship was forced to remain with the British fleet until the battle was over. Baltimore merchant and private George Douglas mentioned in his letter to a friend on the burning of Washington and the defense preparation of Baltimore, "Every American heart is bursting with shame and indignation at the catastrophe at Washington. All hearts and hands cordially unite in the common cause. Every day, almost every hour, bodies of troops are marching into our assistance. The British bombarded Fort McHenry for 25 hours. Kay helplessly watched the bombarding of Fort McHenry from a broad ship located about 8 miles away. The fort defenders bravely withstand the bombarding and did not surrender. According to Deloffin article, after a day, the British were unable to destroy the fort and gave up. Kay was relieved to see the American flag still flying over the Fort McHenry and quickly pinned a few lines in tribute to what he has witnessed. Francis Scott Key took a letter from his pocket and started to write a poem describing his feeling. The truce ship returned to Baltimore on September 16th, and Kay revised and made additions to the poem with the original title of Defense of Fort McHenry. According to the US Flag Organization website, the poem was printed in newspapers and eventually set to a music of popular English drinking tune called The Anachron in Heaven by composer John Stafford Smith. People began referring to the song as the Star Spangled Banner, and in 1960, President Woodrow Wilson announced that it should be played at official events. It was adopted as a national anthem on March 3, 1931. Lastly, I wanted to speak about his monument and memorials. According to Maryland government's website, there are 2 bridges named for Francis Scott Key. The first bridge, the Key Bridge, spans the Potomac River, connecting the Georgetown neighborhood in the District of Columbia with the neighborhood of Roslyn in Arlington County, Virginia. Key Bridge is Washington's oldest existing bridge across the Potomac River. The classical revival-style arch bridge was completed in 1923. The Truss Bridge, spanning the Patapsco River in Maryland, is the second bridge. It spans about 10.9 miles or 17.54 kilometers in length. The construction of this truss building began in 1972 and the bridge opened for traffic on March 23, 1977. According to the Cultural Landscape Foundation website, Francis Scott Key Memorial Park is located near the historical site of Key's place of residence, which was dismantled in 1947. The Francis Scott Key Foundation embarked on fundraising campaign to build the park on the vacant lot following the approval from the National Capital Planning Commission in 1988. The Key Monument Association erected memorial in 1898, and the remains of both Francis Scott Key and his wife, Mary Tyler Lloyd, were placed in the crypt in the basement of the monument. According to Baltimore Heritage Organization website, Baltimoreans have kept the memory of the Battle of Baltimore and the War of 1812 by erecting the Key Monument since 1911. Not only the above-mentioned memorials, but also the couple of middle schools, high schools, university halls named for Francis Scott Key in order to show lasting gratitude and respect to the author of the national anthem. Now that I have detailed a couple of information about Francis Scott Key, including his biography, his famous work, and where you can find his memorials, the information I shared with you help you have a better understanding about him. Francis Scott Key is a man behind our national anthem, and the Star Spangled Banner is still waving over the land of the free and the home of the brave. Thank you for listening.